Good morning, everybody. Just wanted to welcome you to step 10 of our continuing 12-step series. This series is to help people that are going through the Steps to Freedom workbook by Doug Weiss. And so we are most of the way through now, just 2 talks left to go after today. As I said, today we're going to be talking about step 10, and so we'll get into that in just a bit. If you haven't seen the prior videos and you're watching this for the first time, please, go back in the list and look for the talk that's all about step 1. The steps are worked linearly, and so it's really important to start at the beginning and then work your way forward from there. The goal of this study is just to demystify each of the steps in the 12 steps, just make it approachable for you so that you don't feel any intimidation about doing so. The work is there. It takes work to do, but there's it doesn't need to be as mystifying as it sometimes can seem to certain people. So my goal is just to give you a snapshot about what step 10 is all about today. And so treat the workbook, if you have it, like a journal. Write down everything that comes to your mind as you work and go through it. So step 10. So step 10 says, we continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, we promptly admitted it. And there's a biblical comparison verse that kind of goes with this, which is, so if you think that you are standing firm, be careful that you do not fall. 1 Corinthians 10:12. As a quick reminder, as I always say, you'll never see the word I in the 12 steps. It's all about we. The 12 steps is made to be worked in community together. And so that's just an encouragement to not take this journey alone, but to work with others who are going through the steps, but also to work with somebody who's completed it as a sponsor. So just as a review, in step 9, the previous step before this, we went through a process of evaluating which relationships in our life need a direct in-person amends, such as a face-to-face conversation or a letter or a phone conversation. And we also worked out those who it was appropriate to make indirect or symbolic or living amends, as it's known, which involves committing to a change in our lifestyle, but without any direct communication. So that's what we kind of talked about last time, is kind of figuring out who is all going to be on our list, our amends list, the people we need to make amends to, and then figuring out what is the appropriate response for each of those people. We then also began the journey of making those amends and sought God's wisdom in how we communicated with each person. And we will continue taking opportunities that we have to make these amends to those people that were on our step 9 list. But at the same time, I find it's important to start working on step 10 as well, because sometimes it can take weeks or months to get in touch with a certain people or person, or make time to meet with a certain person. So in the meantime, I find in the effort, or with the goal of not getting stuck, it's important to keep working at the same time. And so step 10, it dovetails a lot anyway. And so it's a good practice to be doing your step 9 while you're doing your step 10, in my opinion. So now here we are on step 10. So in step 10, we begin what are known as the maintenance steps. This does not make them unimportant in any way, because sometimes we might think of, maintenance, that's not like a vital step, but that's actually not the truth at all. In fact, these next 3 steps, 10, 11, and 12, are vitally important, because the hope is that we will not return to the lifestyle we once had. And it's these maintenance steps, like step 10, that will help us in that regard. The only way to do this, to stay in a positive, sober lifestyle, is to continue to apply and practice the tools that we have learned in steps 1 through 9 in our everyday life, so that we can stay on a positive trajectory in our recovery. So while our lives have taken a drastic change in a new direction through recovery process, we have to keep on that path. Otherwise, we will quickly be back in our old dysfunctional ways of life very soon. So step 10 is an opportunity to practice humility, connection with others, and making small but regular amends for the small mistakes that we make on a daily basis. Step 10 is also proof to ourselves and to those around us that we are not just a one-time recovery participant, but instead we are committing to a new and productive way of life in all our days going forward until our end. So step 10 is a big part of that. The best way to practice step 10 in our daily lives is to establish a daily time of what we call personal inventory. During this time of inventory, we ask ourselves questions regarding how we treated others during that day. So this could happen, say, at the beginning of every day. You could review the day that you had previously had, or you could, do a personal inventory at the end of every evening, thinking about what had happened that day. So there's many questions you could ask yourself through this personal inventory. But 4 examples are, firstly, how did I show love to others today? Were there opportunities that I had where I took the time to give somebody an encouragement or a positive compliment? This is part of, often for us in recovery, we can be quite critical of others or ourselves. And so this is an ointment or a cure or a treatment to that, is to be expressive in the way that we give feedback positively to others. So first question, yeah, how did I show love to others today? And if I didn't, why didn't I, right? Question 2, did I act in an unloving way toward anyone today? So the opposite of the first question, did I critically tear somebody down today? Did I find, faults in people that didn't need to be pointed out in that moment? Did I selfishly, say things that were self-serving? All these kinds of things. And as we think of these examples, we make a note of these, and we then are wanting to promptly make amends for that, apologize, and chart a different course forward based on these things that come to mind. Third question that we can ask ourselves is, did I lie to anyone today? Very often lying and addiction of any kind goes hand in hand. And so a really good indicator of, how I'm doing in my recovery journey is, am I lying to people, especially those that are closest to me, my wife or my spouse or my kids or, my accountability partners, people like that. So if we're lying to people, that's a sign that things are not going right, and we need to make amends for that. Finally, a fourth question is, did others see in me the joy of having a personal relationship with God, with Jesus? So we are, this is a faith-based recovery program. So for us, being intentional with our relationship with God and with Jesus and the Holy Spirit is very important. And so the question that we have to ask ourselves is, did we take that time to make that a priority, or did we let that slip in our life? So after this time of daily inventory, we need to take prompt action to address any areas that God puts on our mind. Um, Again, God uses conviction, not condemnation, to remind us of things where we're going off the rails a little bit. So we need to allow ourselves to feel if there's any conviction in our life, if there's things that we don't feel good about, and we want to make amends for that. So for instance, if I had lied to my wife, or if I was critical with a coworker, or if I did not take opportunities to love my children in a day, these are all examples of things that I need to make amends for. In this way, we start to exercise our accountability and humility muscles. If you think of recovery kind of like a workout, right? Instead of doing repetitions of, curling a dumbbell, we instead we're doing reps of these amends process of being honest and humble with ourselves and with others, and taking accountability for the things that we've done. So these recovery muscles and habits that we're building are what will keep us safe and strong in our recovery going forward. So it's essential that we practice, that we keep working on these recovery muscles, if you want to call it that. And it's essential that we become quick to address the small amends that we need to make to those around us every day. The reason we do this is twofold. There's two really good reasons for that. The first reason we do so is that the small, poor actions on our part is so that these small, poor actions on our part don't develop into big resentments in the hearts of those around us. So if we are constantly critical or demeaning, or we don't show love to our kids or whatever that might be, these things have a way of building up in the hearts and minds of other people around us, the people that we claim that we love and that we are meant to be, supportive of. So in order to combat that, to not let that build up into a resentment in that person's life, we need to be taking initiative to address that. The second big reason that we address these amends promptly is so that we are not tempted to just shrug off what we have done and assume that it is not important to that other person. Um, uh, it can be easy in recovery or just in daily life to assume that, oh, I know I said that little thing, but I'm sure it didn't actually hurt that person very badly. And by doing so, we're training ourselves back into that habit of lying or not taking responsibility, or just generally not being accountable to those around us. So both for the other person's sake, but also for our own, we need to be continually putting ourselves in situations where we are humble, we take accountability and we act on it in a prompt manner. And so prompt means, when we become aware of it, we now have a responsibility to address it. So that might be in the next moment, or it might be the next morning. If we're doing a daily inventory at night, we take the next opportunity we have to try and address that thing that we had done. Again, in step 9, we were kind of making amends, and we continue to make amends for really big things, the big ways that we've hurt people in the past. But in step 10, we're essentially trying to not have to do a massive sweeping clean of our life. We're trying to address things promptly when they're small, so that they don't grow into big, festering issues. So lies, like the two that we just talked about, that we don't need to address things promptly and that it's not a big deal for the other person, these are lies that are actually footholds that weaken our recovery over time, and they draw us back into our old destructive lifestyles. So it's imperative, super important, that we don't let these things come into our minds, and we don't let these things just lie as they are, because they will inevitably draw us back into the exact thing that we're trying to get away from. Yeah. So that really is what step 10 is all about. It's just being intentional with the way that we don't allow a massive amount of garbage to build up on our side of the street that we then have to, clean house on later. And so ideally, if we do a really good step 10 for the rest of our life, we don't necessarily have to do the steps again. But if we let the things slack and if we let things slide, then that's when we have to do the steps all over again, because we've built up some big things again. So if there is a perfect way to do recovery, it would be to make step 10 a cornerstone part of your recovery going forward, making quick amends promptly for the little things and the big things that we do that harm other people. So yeah, just some specific guidance about the workbook. So on page 96 in the book, step 10 is quite small in the workbook, and so it doesn't take up nearly as many pages as other steps have done. But the main cornerstone of what the book asks us to do is to take a 30-day period or a 31-day period, a whole month, and to track all of the amends that we have to make. So if there are things that we said to our wife that were critical, or if there's lies that we made again, or if we're not helpful at work, anything like that, we keep a list of the things that we have done, and then we acknowledge the strength that we kind of grew in while we were going through that experience. How did we get stronger because of making that amend to that person? So the work is to track for 31 days exactly the times that we have had to make amends to other people around us. And again, this isn't an exercise in beating ourselves up. It's an exercise in humility, and just we talk about how do you establish a new habit or routine in our life. Often it takes a couple months, but at least in this case, we're tracking it for a whole month. We're trying to intentionally daily think about these areas that we need to make amends for, and then record exactly what we did based on that. So yeah, record every time that you do make an amend. But I will say, don't make up amends for the sake of filling in a line. When I did this, I do have a number of lines that I wrote nothing to amend. So if there was nothing that day, which is obviously how we want it to be, we're not just trying to make up something every day that we're making amends for. So only write in a line if there was something you did, but be, I guess, sensitive and not, again, allow your heart to be hard-hearted, where like you're assuming that other people don't care, or it didn't affect other people, the things that we said or did. Assume that it did, and then write down, and then make amends, mini amends for each of those things that we did do. So, but if there is a line or there is a day when you didn't have to make an amend, you acted very positively and upliftingly with those that you were in contact with, and you can't think of a single thing after praying to God and asking him to reveal things to you, then that's fine. Leave the line blank, or write nothing to amend in that line. So that's just fine. That's the main kind of cornerstone of step 10. There's other questions that ask you about how long it took you to make those amends and to be prompt. Again, it's just trying to get to train us to be prompt and to address things on a daily basis and not let them pile up to 3 or 4 or 7 days. The workbook is really trying to encourage us to act quickly and promptly on the things that we have to make amends for. So that's the main key I found to this step. So again, while you're doing your step 9, if you've come to this point and you're working along in the workbook, and you likely still have more people you need to make amends to, don't stop there. still continue to make those appointments with those people that you need to make big amends with, but at the same time, start working on this. It's definitely in the same line of thinking to make small daily amends to the people that are around us on a daily basis. So, yeah. So again, just kind of final thoughts. I really think it's important to share what you're learning and the things that you're doing in this workbook with somebody else that I would call a sponsor or an accountability partner. Be open and honest and share the main key insights that you're learning along the way. And again, with step 9, it's really important to present your list of people to make amends to, so that they can give wisdom to you on who is appropriate to make direct amends to and who we need to make living amends to. So, and just encouragement to not get stuck. If you think that the work is too hard or there's too much to do, just find some way to keep yourself encouraged. Do your part, ask God to give you that strength and that motivation, and ask somebody to keep you accountable to keep moving ahead. We really don't get the full blessing or benefit of doing the steps if we don't complete it entirely. So please keep on the journey and reach out to those who are supportive of you in this recovery journey, and get their help to keep going. So yeah, that's basically everything. Just want to wish you the best and a blessing as you go through this process. Just take this step to heart. It's really important. It's a really core fundamental way of us staying positive and staying strong in our recovery going forward. So be humble, be willing to accept feedback, and be willing to give amends to others that we inevitably will harm in small ways on a day-to-day basis. So just all of God's blessing to you as you continue in this journey. So take care.